This meeting, let's see, members of the subcommittee are hereby advised of their duty under the State Ethics in Government Act to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflict, and are instructed to refrain from participating in any matter coming before this subcommittee with respect to which there is a conflict of interest or an appearance of conflict. Does anyone have a conflict that they perceive based on the agenda or from any other source? If not, everybody is forewarned here. As far as introductory remarks are concerned, we have had a good month since our last meeting. It's been a pleasure to continue working with Savannah, and we got Cameron back from some of his DHC responsibilities, basically his day job. And so we welcome him back. The draft minutes are in your package from the meeting of June 8th. Hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to review the minutes. Are there any revisions or suggestions for amendment coming from the group? If not, is there a motion to approve these minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
I second.
Good. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 That's three. Aye. Four.
Aye.
All right, good. Majority has that then. They are deemed approved. The assessment areas remain the same. There may be a basis for adding, looking at in part today, and that relates to items that are going to be covered by Cameron and by Mel and by Walter in a coalescence of circumstances that may suggest to us that we ought to include something on how one actually designates secure leave and goes through the process of navigating the labyrinth of requirements that can be out there. But I will save all that for them to comment on as we go through the agenda. Now, as far as input from stakeholders, you'll see one notation there that something that I had in my possession, I think, from the first meeting. This is how Walter Brock will come back and haunt you if you don't look closely the first time. Walter, at one of our early meetings, sent us all a document that's used by the Office of Administrative Hearings to request secure leave. And actually on that form is a reference to the North Carolina Administrative Code, which adopts secure leave periods for attorneys that are going to be having hearings before bodies that are under the administrative rules. So, Walter, thank you for that. It's something we've been looking for with the question, do people at administrative agencies ever need secure leave? Well, they've got their own NCAC authorization and form. And so I've included it in your materials this time around so that you'll have the actual regulations that go with the form. So thank you again, Walter. Now, the next item on the agenda is the status of the information survey that was circulated. I hope you have had an opportunity to look at the results of this survey. I think it is a gold mine of information. Not only did we get almost 1,000 responses to the survey, but we've got a lot of substantive comment where attorneys took their time and made those comments. And some of them are, I think, very informative, and I think we'll be using them to finish our work. It was our hope, I think, as a group that we would receive some guidance, and boy, did we ever. I think some of the folks just didn't hold back and told us what they had on their mind. Without further ado, I'd like to call on Savannah to present what she has on what happened to the survey, with the survey, where it may go, and that kind of thing. Savannah?
Thanks, Gordon. So we received 958 responses from the different stakeholder groups that we asked to send this around to their members. The largest groups, the top 4 that we got responses from, are litigation in general. It seems to me like PI lawyers fell into that category. Family lawyers were next, criminal lawyers were after that, and then insurance defense and workers' compensation lawyers. 90% of the 958 responses that we received were lawyers that had either used secured leave before, or they want or have wanted to use secured leave in the past. The uses that the lawyers indicated, or the purposes for their secured leave requests, were vacations. That was the largest majority, and that's consistent with what we've discussed is the purpose of secured leave. Births and adoptions of children were next, marriages, and a smaller percentage of lawyers did indicate that they have used secured leave for CLE and professional development, and also for elective surgeries. In looking at the other responses that we got, some other interesting uses that hadn't come to at least my mind before was military training or some other required time spent in the reserves, court time that they have to spend in another jurisdiction that they're licensed in, lawyers having second jobs and taking secured leave to spend some time doing something else to earn money. And then also lawyers taking time to focus or prepare for other large matters. If they've got a major case coming up, they might take secured leave the entire week before, so they can have some additional time to focus. 83% of the lawyers who responded to our survey said that taking secured leave did improve their mental health. I thought it was interesting that some of the comments suggest that it's not only the lawyer's mental health that they're seeing an improvement in, but also their spouses and children seem to have some improvement in theirs if the lawyer is doing well. The comments, one comment also suggested that taking secured leave improved that lawyer's attitude towards their client matter when they got back. And I think that would be helpful for our lawyers. So the aspects that the lawyers who responded to our survey would like to see change is the Sunday to Saturday requirement. We've already discussed this within our subcommittee meetings. The full calendar week, the responding lawyers said that they would like to see it be daily or maybe 2 to 3 days instead of the full calendar week. Next, they would like to see the number of secured leave designations increased. Some would say up to 5 weeks, some would say maybe it should be unlimited. I think we've discussed that topic as well a bit in our last few meetings. Next, the responding lawyers would like to see the advance notice requirement be lessened. A pretty consistent request was that it be 45 or 60 days in the comments. And that was, in reading the comments that we received on different questions, the 90-day advance notice requirement was something that our lawyers had the biggest issue with. They don't feel like they can adequately plan when they need to take secure leave, and they'd like to see that come down. And then the last two are the submission procedure. Lawyers indicated that it's very difficult or time consuming for them to get a secure leave designation form to all of their opposing counsels and all of the jurisdictions in which they practice. They would like us to consider or at least discuss whether or not we could or this forms could be emailed to opposing counsels. And whether there could be a statewide depository or a registry for filing secured leave designation forms. And along that same line, the lawyers didn't really have much of an issue with the content that we're asking lawyers to put into the secured leave designation, but would like to see a uniform form, such as like an AOC form, that they can use in all of the different places. And then lastly, we have given a lot of time to talking about potential abuses of secured leave. It really doesn't seem like that is is a major issue throughout the state. The different types of abuses that our lawyers that responded did say that they have observed is taking too much secured leave time, not giving the full 90 days notice, not taking a full calendar week, lawyers saying that they're on secured leave, but not having anything on file, whether that's before they go on vacation or while they're on vacation. And then lawyers trying to delay or dodge trials, that some people have perceived a use of secured leave as trying to delay. But overall, those were my big takeaways, or at least a summary of the takeaways. It's a long survey of responses, but I think it was a major success to know what problems we can try to solve.
Very good. Thank you, Savannah. Does anyone have any particular questions they want to ask Savannah about the survey and the results? Okay. Appreciate your report, Savannah. We'll be coming back to this, I think, multiple times during this meeting for obvious reasons. But I will tell you that as I read through some of these responses and to some questions, I think especially question 6, we got 300 and some individual comments to the question. And that's just, again, a lot of information that does provide guidance. Item number 6 on our agenda is the raising of the white flag for survey of secure leave policies in other jurisdictions, unless there is a revolt among the members. I think we have tried to get as much information as we can from relevant jurisdictions, and thought we might want to change the vector for Cameron a little bit to move in the direction of some of these questions or topics that were introduced, I think, in main part last meeting when Walter Brock said that he would like to look into the question of the technologies for a central registry for secure leave filings and that kind of thing. And it got the wheels turning. And so instead of deploying him again to tell us what Montana does or Idaho for secure leave, we've got a pretty good database on it from other jurisdictions, certainly all the sister jurisdictions in the Southeast with North Carolina, as well as places like Texas, Illinois, California have all been looked at, and we've gotten some good information from it. What he's looked at, and he's looking at, hopefully on a parallel track with what Walter's looking at, is what are they doing around the state of North Carolina and the various judicial districts. We had looked at local rules and discovered that there are lots of local rules that deal with it, and they deal with it differently. and a lot of local districts have their own forms, and the forms are non-uniform, and there are other things like that. So he's got the topic secure leave balkanization among North Carolina judicial districts. So Cameron, I know you've not been on this assignment very long, but I know you've already been working on it. What can you tell us?
Well, yeah, as you said, I've been tasked with going through the local rules of the several judicial districts throughout our state to see how they address secured leave on the local level. And I've been through just about all of them, if not all of them. I need to go back and check myself, but I found that they mainly impact the administration of Rule 26 rather than the substance of Rule 26. And they do this in two principal ways. First, in terms of the notice requirement, there are disparate notice requirements, and that might not surprise any of you to hear. I mean, the various jurisdictions require notice to entities that are not necessarily contemplated in Rule 26. The second way I found that they impact the administration of Rule 26 is the districts, as you noted, well, Gordon, have their own forms. And so what you have, or at least what I'm seeing, is that the local rules turn what should be a fairly straightforward process for applying for secured leave into kind of a Baroque series of hoops that a lawyer who might practice in a number of districts has to jump through to apply for secured leave. And it suggests that maybe a standard statewide form and process is probably a good idea. And in that regard, as you said, this work goes hand in hand with the work that Walter has undertaken. And I hope by our next subcommittee meeting to have a formal report prepared. And there's quite a lot of, this research has generated quite a lot of information, but I will make our report as the volume of information that I have allows.
Okay. Any questions of Cameron? I know he's looked at a lot of forms, and it's amazing what kind of differences there are. But for those that
I do have one question for him, Gordon, if I can. Can you said there's a variety of notice periods? Can you give us some sense of what you're seeing there in terms of the range of days as we begin to take up that topic?
I'm sorry, I may have misspoke. I did not mean notice periods. The big divergence is on the entities to whom notice must be provided. In some jurisdictions, they say, don't notice the clerk, notice the TCA, or notice the clerk, the TCA, the Superior Court, the senior resident, the chief district, the DA. I mean, that's the big divergence. They all adhere to the 90-day notice period. And I don't think it would be appropriate for the local jurisdictions to change that period meaningfully. I mean, none of them are really touching on the substance of Rule 26. So I'm sorry if I missed.
Okay, no, I misunderstood. Yeah, okay, that's good.
Okay. Any other questions of Cameron? All right. Well, Cameron is a segue into what Walter indicated he would give some thought to from last meeting to this meeting. And it deals with the streamlining of the process for filing for secure leave. By the way, as Savannah mentioned, in the responses to the survey, the process of actually designating and obtaining secure leave apparently is a matter of significant interest to those who responded, and they pretty much all indicated that it would be better if it could be made more streamlined and more user friendly. In fact, there's one poignant response that I've got sticky noted for my use about someone that said it's counterproductive to the idea of secure leave when the process for applying for it is so exhaustive. And I can see the irony there. Walter, are you ready to share with us?
Sure, I can give you a report, but I'm actually a little reluctant for us to streamline this process because I love the word balkanization. I mean, what's a better term and just more descriptive? It's just really good. And I'd hate to do away with the opportunity to use that word. Can I say it a couple more times in my presentation? Just to sound like I know something. Balkanization. That's just.
But don't get arrested for doing it in public, whatever you do.
Well, being from Anson County, you know, I got a feeling of what that means. But anyway. But anyway, I've had some delightful conversations with a lady called Cynthia Blackwell with the AOC. And I'm pleased to announce that at least they sound receptive to working with us to figure out a way to do this on a statewide basis, which would, of course, give rise to a single form naturally, but to have a statewide repository. And of course, she reminded me, well, we don't have statewide filing yet. I said, well, we know that. We're actually trying to get ahead of the ball here a little bit. And so she is running this through their process over there, and she's receptive to it. And the next step is to talk to folks on the technology side of it as to how that could best be done. But Cameron has raised some interesting issues about how we sell that to some of these local divisions and districts, because they're very protective of their local procedures. So I guess we need to tread lightly on this in some way. But I'm happy to say, at least from a willingness standpoint, AOC is interested in exploring this and talking with us about how to do this from an e-filing standpoint. So no anticipated pushback, but very, very welcoming of going this route. So, and I'm interested in hearing from a technology standpoint as to, you know, what that repository would look like. But I mean, as far as I understand, most people go to the website to get their calendars now. I don't think anybody mails calendars anymore, and I don't know why this can't be pretty much the same. And maybe do away with even having to send out notices. The filing would be the notice. Or that's what it would be ideal, wouldn't it?
Gordon, can I say something?
Yes, sir.
The timing is right for us to do something as basically we've been talking about, because the e-courts movement is afoot, and everything is pretty much going to be online in the next few years. This would be a perfect example of something I think that could benefit by doing it online. And I think we have people here at AOC and the people who are helping implement the e-court system to help us. So the timing, I think, is right to get it done, to get a uniform notice form. And so I think that issue is something that we certainly could deal with, and that the court system would be glad to help.
Good. Walter, do you think Ms. Blackwell would have advanced her thinking enough and checking with folks at AOC that she would be receptive to joining us for the next meeting?
I'll be glad to talk to her about that.
What does the committee think?
I think that's a good idea.
So do I. Good idea.
Okay. Well, maybe it is an idea whose time has come. The seeing the rules and all the forms was certainly a wake-up call for me. I don't practice before the courts that much anymore, but I'll have to contact 2 or 3 myself if I'm thinking about taking any time off, and that goes pretty well. But those that have very active trial or or hearing schedules. It's a very different case. Anything else, Walter, you want to share with us along that line?
No,
Because
that's about as far as I've been able to get. Hopefully there's been internal conversation over there about, what that would look like and all, but I haven't gotten that feedback yet.
okay. Well, if there are no other comments on this topic that's listed actually in the agenda, we're going to get right back into it again when we get into topic 9 and we get into the resumption of our discussions about Rule 26 and its appellate rule analog. And on page 13 of the agenda, you'll see where we left off. You've noticed, starting with the last meeting, I try to do a little summary of comments. This is not an official transcript, mind you, but I do go back and look at the YouTube of our proceedings and try to get the ebb and flow of it right. You will find that the meeting in May is red. The meeting in June is blue. And if you want to take wagers on what the color for the July meeting will be in terms of the summaries when I add those, we're on. But we need to pick up on page 13 where it says accounting for prior allowances. And that's where we'll start in terms of these discussions. Actually, accounting for prior allowances is connected with where to submit and what to submit. So it's still part of the same genre. We're here. We're just coalescing into this kind of topic for this and the balance of page 13 to talk about. So the accounting for prior allowances is part of the record keeping aspect. And there are some forms where you fill in where you have, what have you previously taken in this year? And you go in and you disclose what you've taken. I guess it's a check on making sure that you yourself, when you sign the document, you've gone back and checked your records to know what you've taken as far as secure leave is concerned. Are there any issues that any of the subcommittee members see arising out of the way that rule is currently expressed? It's Rule 26D sub 4. The days of any previously designated secure leave periods that count against the allowance. Okay. Anything on that?
I guess I think the rule is probably fine, and I thought the way it was just listed like on the AOC form where you list prior ones makes sense. The one thing I was wondering is whether there is anybody, for example, a court official or someone else that is looking at that. In other words, if you submit, or would that simply be an abuse of the leave if you submit it and fail to list prior leaves or submit for more than whatever the new approved amount is? I assume there's not a process where someone's actually counting days other than the attorney themselves.
I do not know the answer to that question. How about any of the rest of the subcommittee members or staff?
I don't know how this works in practice, but I did notice in Wake County's rules, civil superior court, that notice requests were meant to be transmitted to the TCA, who I believe is supposed to, according to the local rule, maintain a database of secured leave periods taken by attorneys. And I would think that you could use that to police this aspect of the rule. I could reach out to the TCA and find out whether they're actually doing that and how it works in practice, if that's something that the committee members would be interested in.
That may be helpful to know what they're doing in practice. I have a suspicion, and that is probably many judicial districts do not monitor that. It's just there and for the record. And should it come to light that someone has not been totally open and honest with the system, there would be repercussions. But it's a lot of work to monitor what lawyers are doing.
Yeah.
And once, and if we make the assumption that the possible revision of the rules that would see secure leave taken in 2-day minimums would become the rule, that monitoring job would become more and more burdensome. So unless it's digitized some way. So basically, Mark has raised a question about it. Are there any questions that deal with whether the requirement is appropriate, or is it just a cost benefit analysis as to whether disclosure means anything in terms of regulation?
I think it's fine to have that disclosure out. It just for the honor system. I mean, we can assume that it's on the honor system, and I think it's fine to do that. Who in the world would be stupid enough to lie about that? I mean, really?
Yeah, true. Okay. Can you hear that? I mean, no present danger, I hope. Now, the other two requirements of D is the statement of non-interference, that the attorney has taken adequate measures to protect the interests of the attorney's clients during the secure leave period. I'm sorry, that was one off. 5 is the one about it's not for purposes of interfering with the timely disposition of any proceeding. Does anyone have any thoughts about that, good, bad, or indifferent? Appears to be an appropriate thing to say because it is an honor system. So everybody's given that a check mark. And then the statement that I alluded to just a minute ago about measures have been taken to protect the interests of the attorney's clients during the secure leave period. Any issues with that? I think these are all duties, and it's I think there's certainly, from the standpoint of the state bar's interest in protecting the public, 5 and 6 are, I think, totally appropriate. Any disagreement? Okay, with that, then we'll move on. The next subparagraph is where to submit the designation. And here we're getting back into it again. The rules specify where you send things if you're criminal or civil or special proceedings. And within the area of special proceedings, there are estates as well, juvenile. Interestingly enough, they don't mention domestic, which I guess would be a subset of civil, although counties like Wake, for example, and probably Mecklenburg, have secure leave rules for their family courts. I think in the greater body of work that Cameron is beginning, you're seeing the genesis of why reports or secure leave requests go to different people. It depends on what you're doing, whether you're doing a criminal case or civil case. And the routing of those documents will go and follow those, because the DA is going to want to know what about civil, and I think your TCAs are going to want to know about civil. Clerks are going to know about special proceedings. I don't know who gets juvenile, but this is some of the source of that balkanization. And I don't know what could be done about it other than a registry as an alternative. That's a repository where things get routed automatically. And if the folks planning court calendars and things of that nature need access to it, they can dial into it and find out theoretically, if the technology will support it, that it's a secure leave period that's been submitted. So I don't know really what to do about these rules unless we have an alternative to suggest. And that would be, again, left up to, I think, Cameron and Walter and anyone else on this committee that really wants to take a deep look into this, or a deep dive, to propose an alternative, even if it's just conceptual at this stage. The requirements of this and the runway for making it happen in terms of a report or a recommendation that would be ready to go to the issues committee by October. I just don't know if there's that much time, but certainly the seeds could be sowed in the possibilities out there in terms of recommendations to work with AOC or other parts of the judiciary to make this happen. Should it prove possible to do? I think the various landing sites for all of these secure leave designations is probably a function of lack of technology and having to do it the old way and keep it within judicial districts as the basic level of government, so to speak, that's out there, and it's the most local. Any thoughts on this, Mel?
Yeah.
You've got some insights, I think.
I'd like to ask this question. Do you think we've had enough input from our judges and the clerks? Because so much of the process, if you will, has to go through their offices. And I forwarded that email from Judge Howard today or yesterday. And I'm sort of wondering if we have some input from them, what suggestions they would make. It sounded like one of the thoughts that Judge Coward had was that we ought to be able to have a central location for the notice, and then it could be distributed accordingly. And that's, again, something that's coming with new technology and making it easier, I would guess. But I also would like to know if the judges and the clerks had any real issues that they'd like for us to address that we haven't yet thought of.
What would be your recommendation as to how to reach out and determine what input they would have, what special sensitivities they may hold to the idea of innovation like this?
Well, I believe there are people in this Judicial Center building that would be very knowledgeable of how this could best be done. I'm speaking to a clerks conference next month down in Wilmington, and I can ask them there for their input. But I would also like to determine if we could make it easier for somebody filing for security, that it could be filed in one particular spot. Now, the clerk's office may be expected to to ramrod that or do it, and they may say, we don't have enough people to do that. But we, at least I think, need to talk.
Okay. Well, that might be a way to solicit input from the clerks, and they would be very influential. Is there any, in terms of gaining access to judges, are they scheduling any conferences, annual conferences of judges, or maybe it's quarterly? I'm not sure how they do it.
And they just had them.
Okay.
I'll be glad to contact them and see if they would like to have the opportunity to be heard.
I think you're right. It's not going to go anywhere unless they're going to be advocates for it in the system.
Right.
Besides lawyers, what about on the appellate level?
Yeah, I've never really thought about that, but certainly that should be a part of the discussion too.
Yeah, already I know my law partner filed for secure leave in the last week or so, and was surprised, I guess, to find that you didn't have to do it online. And she said it was really easy once she understood that. And so there he goes. But the appellate courts have that worked out, something Walter had mentioned at the previous meeting. So maybe it would get some traction. Mel, would you undertake to make those contacts? And
I'll be glad to.
yeah, if there's any committee member that wants to focus on this with Mel and or offer assistance, or I'm sure he sometimes feels like the lone wolf out there, but he does know all the folks. He's the most well-known lawyer out there, I think, and everybody's always happy to see him coming. So I think that opens a lot of doors.
Mel, did you mention the TCAs? I assume there's some kind of organization of TCAs also.
Yeah, I just wrote down clerk, but I will do that. And in addition, if it's okay, I'm going to contact somebody here at AOC who is working on this e-courts stuff, who maybe could have some great input as well.
Okay. That would be really, really helpful. I know it. We're not going to hurry. My goal is to get this report to the Issues Committee by October, but we're not going to sacrifice. I don't think anybody on this subcommittee wants to sacrifice quality in to having an on-time delivery. If we need to take a little longer, I'm sure they'll forgive us. But I think we're on track for having a great deal of work done by then. It may be that this issue is so bound up with other moving parts that it might take a little bit longer. But Mel, if you would spearhead that, then let us know what we can do to help you on that part. I'm sure everybody here would be willing to do that. And we can always assign it to somebody not here, and that'll learn them. Although we've only got 2 or 3 folks that were absent, but it is vacation time. All right, so at the present time, I don't know that there's anything we can do to talk about submitting designations as in a way that's an alternative for what's listed, but that does not stop us from designating that area for continued study and further work on this committee, at least if we can move the ball so that it becomes something everybody knows has to be dealt with or should be dealt with as we go along. That would be, I think, a big step forward. Any other comments on this area? Okay. Here is subparagraph F. In my review of the responses to the survey, the 90-day requirement is the most concerning to the respondents. There's a lot said about it, and it is the thing that causes people the most trouble, because sometimes it's very hard, particularly with a fluid practice, to make a decision 90 days out. And sometimes people don't make those decisions and they don't end up taking secure leave, or they're making those decisions and putting in for secure leave and then wasting it because they can't take it. So there's a lot about this that probably should be discussed. And this may be another area where we can be of some help to bring more benefits or secure leave benefits to the practicing bar without disrupting the flow of the business in the courts. And again, anything we do or decide needs to be for the benefit of the consuming public, not the lawyers, but lawyers that don't have a good worldview, or they're burned out, or they're depressed, are not good for the consuming public. So I think it's an appropriate area for discussion. What are your thoughts on, let me just go around and get thoughts from each of you on this and see what you think. Kevin, let's start with you, if you don't mind. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to see any of the survey, but
Yes.
the 90-day rule was one that got a lot of comment as being too restrictive. What are your thoughts? What's your experience been?
I would agree with that. And from experience, at least in our district, with putting together calendars and what we know is coming up, it is difficult to do that 3 months out as far as secured leave. One of the things I think is common that we've had here that people have mentioned is reflected in the surveys, where most people have said 45 days. Some people have said as small or short as 30, but I think that might be a bit too short. But 45 days seems to be kind of right in line with what people think would be sufficient. It would give a 6-week period. I think that would help. I think it was the Georgia one that required some level of sign off from other parties, but it was a shorter period. I think a 45-day period without having to necessarily get any sign offs would be able to shorten it, but give enough time that other people can still make plans around that court-wise.
Okay. Good comment. Let's see. Mark?
I also am in favor of shortening the 90-day period. I was originally thinking 60 days after reading the comments. There's several for 45 and some for 30. I guess I'm persuadable. I think to me, the driving factor is how much notice we need to provide to the courts. Remember, we're creating this as a period where courts won't schedule stuff. So if they are scheduling stuff further out than that, it seems potentially problematic to designate it. You've got this tension between, well, you have to do it certain days in advance, but you can't do it in a way that conflicts with anything that's already scheduled. But my bottom line is I could live with anything from 30 to 60 days would seem reasonable to me. I do think 90 is too long.
Okay. Walter?
I move for leave to adopt Mark's comments.
Okay.
Second.
Let's see. Catherine? You there?
Yes, I don't have anything profound to add. So, I mean, sorry, Mark, Walter, Kevin have all stolen it, but I could go 30 to 60. I think 90 is too long. So whatever seems reasonable. In my world, it doesn't really matter just because of how the calendars are set in a way. So, but yes, less than 90. Now, I would love personally to see 30, but I could understand that that may be considered too short. So I'll take 45, and I'm sure Mark could twist my arm to go with 60 if he really wanted to.
Okay. Mel?
I agree with what's been said. I think 45 makes good sense. I certainly would agree with that.
So this is would always take place that if there is a proceeding scheduled or a hearing noticed or a trial that's already out there, then if it's gonna that's got priority. That's got priority. So and we're not even, I take it the group is not interested in doing away with any requirement of notice. For example, if nothing is scheduled, you can do it the next week. Anybody that have a thought along that line?
I mean, I would go
sometimes-
for that. I mean, to the extent that you can set it and you don't have a conflict and you want to do it at the last minute. I mean, I certainly would think that's reasonable. What I don't know, what I can't balance out is the difficulty for the clerk's office or the scheduling office if things are dropped. And so that's the only thing that I think needs consideration. I mean, I would vote for, if you've got the time, you can set it, even if it's 48 hours in advance, but that's just me.
Yeah. Well, it may be a question of workflow or a limitation on access to the courts. Suppose that you decide maybe next week I'll go to Tahoe for 3 or 4 days. And then somebody, the day after you send in your secure leave designation for the next week, somebody files a lawsuit and wants to schedule a TRO hearing next week. Is that a restraint on the court's ability to respond to an emergency? I don't know, balancing it off that way. But I'm trying to make sure that we talk all that through because we're going to be asked about it. By the way, has anybody else joined this? I'm only.
No, we haven't added anybody.
And okay, very good. I didn't want to be not asking somebody a question if they had joined. I've got a limited number of screens in front of me. Thank you. So again, are we at a point where we're comfortable with less notice if nothing has been scheduled, and but we're not comfortable taking it down to practically eliminating notice because of certain kinds of proceedings that can come up quickly and need immediate attention? Is that where we are with this?
I think so.
I think so. I'd worry a little bit about the last minute thing, like around depositions and stuff. If you've got a discovery deadline coming, but the deposition hasn't been set, and suddenly you get the last 2 weeks of your discovery period is secure leave, done, 2 weeks and a day out. Now you can't schedule any depositions and create, I could see more potential for a timing abuse if attorneys can really do it last minute. So I agree. So yes, Gordon, I think that's where I am. Shorten it, but I think it should be at least 30 days. And again, 30 or 45 seems like where we're kind of coming down on consensus, but I'm also, very persuadable in what that.
Can I get a straw poll from the committee members? At least 30 days? Wave at me, Mark.
Yeah.
Walter. Kevin. Okay, at least 30 days. Savannah, Cameron, what do you think?
I'll be honest, I haven't taken secured leave yet. So I think 30 days would sound lovely. I'll go ahead and take it.
Do we need to go talk to Catherine about this?
I mean, I guess so. I don't know.
Yes.
It just means you don't have to go to court. It doesn't mean you don't have to work, unfortunately.
Right. I would just call Cameron if somebody hauled me into court and say, can you go do that for me? But yeah, I mean, 30 days sounds great. My significant other had to take secured leave for a vacation we're going to take, and I had to beat him to get him to do it within 90 days.
You just confessed to a crime.
Well, I didn't really beat him, but it was a verbal beating. Get that in so we can go. But what do you think, Cameron?
Having taken secured leave in my past life, I support the 30-day crowd. I'll cast my lot in with them.
All right. What do you think do you think there'll be any pushback from clerks or TCAs or judges for something that's 30 days? I don't know the answer to the question. I'm just getting a feel for what you all think.
I think it's possible, but I think we need to remind them that if they're scheduling stuff further out, they can continue to do it. In other words, you can set a trial date, 6 months out, and that's not going to be protected anymore. The lawyer has to work around that. So we're shortening the period, but the clerks can go ahead and continue to set hearings and trials and other dates, right? So the lawyer has some incentive to do it earlier. We're just shortening the minimum period so that if the lawyer, really wants to block out July, they need to do it, early. But as long as the court hadn't said anything, they can wait up to 30 days before. I hope that addresses some of the court concerns. The other piece is kind of this whole logistics. It goes into the where and how you file. If it's electronic, that may be easy. If it's a manual process of filing it and then making notations in files, and there may be challenges on the logistics of getting it in 30 days, how long it takes to actually make the notations and not schedule stuff. I don't know the inner workings of the clerk's offices well enough to know whether there's going to be any objection on that logistic front. And I think I agree 100% with Mel. If we could use this as a way to do something on a more statewide basis, or use an electronic system where you file it and serve it electronically, and it pops up, when they go to schedule for those people that there's a secure leave period, that would certainly be wonderful if you could do that from a tech standpoint.
Let me ask you, in your individual experiences, here in Orange, you file a complaint, answer it, an issue is joined, and then magically 2 or 3 weeks later, you get your trial date assigned to you. And if that trial date is assigned to you that early, which may be a year from now, does that prevent you from, are you just too slow in filing for your secure leave a year hence if they put that on for a temporary, I guess it's temporary or prospective trial date?
Certainly the way the rule works now, I think the answer is yes, right? Because you have to certify that nothing's scheduled for those dates. So if I have a trial already set for May of 2022, I can't take secured leave on the week that trial's now been set.
Yeah.
We could consider whether to change it, but I don't think that's a good idea either, right? Because then you get it set, it opens up judge shopping and other stuff to say, oh, well, it's set, I'm going to take secure leave and block it. So I do think that happens happily. I think it's, those trial dates, unless you've got a super full docket, you should still be able to find times where you can take your secure leave but you don't have a case set. But I do think for people with hundreds of cases, that can become an issue where they've literally end up having trials set week after week. And of course, no one's actually doing trials now. So you have this bizarre scenario where you have someone that may have 50 trial dates and the expectation of one actual trial.
Yeah. Yeah. Kevin, you run into that in your district?
I think to some extent, maybe, but most of ours, when you're dealing with our domestic cases, things like that, they're usually set about 5 or 6 weeks out, that they've got to have those calendared. Criminal wise, those just kind of depend. Most of those go 30 days to 30 days. So
Okay.
it's something that once something is scheduled, unless it's a homicide case, and there again, like Mark was pointing out, once those are scheduled, they would apply to the rule as it is now anyway, that you already have a scheduled date. So you would not be able to do something in that time period anyway.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got that marked down, just maybe worthy of a comment at some point. But some of our districts do the long lead assignment of trial dates, which really make it hard to plan. It's just reducing it to 30 days, provided there's not a date assigned for a trial or hearing, makes sense. But when they're just routinely assigning those trial dates based on how the long-term calendar looks, the point of education is you're always better off submitting a consent scheduling order than letting the court do it. Okay. Is there a reason to provide any rules or guidances for how to withdraw secure leave previously applied for or amend secured leave without having to make a showing of good cause? I mean, it could be everything from I was going on vacation, but I had a relative die, or I was going on vacation, but I got sick, or I was going on vacation and the ship sank. It could be any number of things to disappoint or frustrate the original intent. I don't remember any guidances about what happens if you have to change your mind.
I've had to do it. So, I mean, luckily there's no process. So I just made it up and no one really said anything about it. But
Well,
I mean,
what do we say Catherine's rule consists of?
all I did was send another letter amending my secure leave. And if I was removing or canceling, I put that very clearly. I've not canceled. What I've had to do is sort of restructure based on a plan change, so sort of things like that. But I just sort of amend my notice and send it back out to the same people I've sent it to before. I have no idea if it's read. It's never come up as being an issue. But I do I would like some guidance on that, because I could see, especially in these situations, somebody taking off, for example, maybe the maximum amount. I mean, not to be pessimistic, but like for an adoption period, and then that not happen. And maybe it's going to happen later in the year. And so they need to be able to resend and then do it again. So I think maybe some limited guidance would be nice.
Good. Anybody else have a comment?
I'm thinking, I mean, I see the desire to say you weren't able to use it, you should then have those days later. The thing that occurs to me, again, from a tactical or abuse standpoint, is you could potentially have, this rolling thing where you set it up and block out your 3 weeks and then nothing's scheduled. And then a week before you say, okay, it's off, I'm blocking the next 3 weeks. And clearly you shouldn't be able to say, okay, I'm blocking it. And just, you end up blocking your entire calendar through shifting secure leave. And I'm not So we obviously don't want that to happen. I don't know, I'm not saying a lot of people would. There's always potential for abuse, but that would be the issue. And you may need to give some, right? The whole idea is if when you cancel it, in theory, then stuff should be able to be scheduled then. So I'm thinking maybe you need to give some notice in advance, right? Saying on Friday, I was off, I had next week for secure leave, but it's open now, doesn't really help the courts or the opposing party fill that time. And at least in my world, that's too short a notice to now try to give a deposition notice or schedule a hearing normally. So maybe you can change it, but you probably need to do it in advance. And then the question becomes how far. But I guess that's just my thought. I like the idea, but I'm thinking about the logistics.
Like if you scheduled far enough out, but then need to change it, you've got up until what, 30 days before you start your secure leave to take it. Again, it's what's sauce for one is sauce for the other.
I think that might make sense. So if I go ahead and book it 6 months out, but then my spouse can't go on that vacation or that date now doesn't work, as long as I have within 30 days out, I should be able to cancel, amend or cancel and say, I'm not taking it then, I'll take it at a different time. Maybe that's the answer, is you can also, you can submit it up to 30 days in advance and you can amend prior submissions up to 30 days in advance. I think that removes most of the abuse potential. Cancel or amend and get those days back. That way you're encouraged to book really far ahead. I could see some people being worried that if they block their 2 weeks and then have to cancel the trip, they lose those 2 weeks. And so they'll be reluctant to pre-commit. And I think it is better for everybody if those things can be scheduled far out. So maybe that's an answer. I agree, though. I see nothing in the current rule about amending or altering or canceling, right? I think you pointed out, Gordon, that is an area that's not addressed right now.
Any other comments on amendments, cancellations?
Yeah, Gordon, just thinking out loud with the group here, it would seem to me to make sense that you need to give notice, cancellation or amendment all within whatever is an agreed notice period, 30, 45 days. There shouldn't be any difference to that. And if that's the case, then you don't have to have any reason. You can just modify a note, and it doesn't put anybody at any disadvantage. It doesn't put the court at disadvantage if it's the same notice period for designating secure leave to begin with. If we should try to come up with some other rule, I'm afraid we're getting into some confusing things. It would just be simplest to say you can designate, withdraw or modify or amend your secure leave by giving X days notice.
Okay. Well, I think that's where Mark came back to, and I think Catherine came back to. And Kevin, do you feel any differently? We started with you on this. Do you feel any differently about that as a resolution?
I think that sounds good. I think that period should be the same. That way there's no confusion.
Okay. Mel, do you see any issues with that from your perch?
No, I think we're headed in the right direction. For some
Okay.
reason, I prefer 45 rather than 30. So much revolved around 30 days that 45 seems safer to me, but I'll go with the majority, whatever you want.
Okay.
Yeah, I was using that as an example, Mel, not as a decision on 30. I agree. I'm comfortable eating both those times.
All right, let's see if we can just develop. I've written down the ranges. We've talked about ranges from 30 to 60. Do we want to, let me see if there's a consensus at one level or another, 30 versus 45, for example. Is everybody equally okay with anywhere from 30 to 45? Do you have a stronger preference? Mel's spoken in favor of 45, but he said he'll go with the group. I don't know that the group is wed to 30. So talk to me.
I'm torn. I was the survey. I haven't totaled every result, but seemed to me the survey results 30 was mentioned more frequently than 45, which is what pushed me a little bit in that direction. But again, I don't know that there's a lot of magic between the two, so I do not feel strongly between 30 and 45. I think both are significant improvements over where we are. So I'm happy to go with either. I would support either.
Well, you think that the powers that be in the judiciary would feel differently about 45 than 30? Visually?
I don't know, but I'd be glad to ask them. I'm going to ask them about notice. That would be a question for them. What might make a difference in their schedule, and see what they say.
Please do. I think we'd all like to hear that. We're not set in stone till we issue our final report as a subcommittee. And of course, so everybody on this call knows that subcommittees are just providing the stuff for others to ponder, and they'll massage it however they want to massage it. But I think it'd be good to get that answer known. In terms of the value to fill in the blank, I'm just going to leave it 30/45 for purposes of discussion. Is that agreeable?
That's agreeable.
All right. Now, moving along, the subparagraph G, depositions. I guess this was perceived to be the principal way to abuse or to have chaos if it's not regulated somehow. So they've got a rule for depositions. Are there any other procedures like that or within that same kind of status that would need to be referenced other than just depositions? Paper discovery, request for production, subpoenas, responding to subpoenas, duces tecum. What others?
I looked at the list, but I think depositions really are the focus. So I would not support trying to add others in. Most of these others, all that they interrogatories, requests for production, have longer periods, and it's also fairly easy to get extensions on those periods. So I don't see them as creating the same secured leave. The subpoena question's interesting, but again, it's hard to, often those are the third parties that may or may not be represented. So you get in the same issue about trying to do designations where you're not sure who the party is, and duces tecum are much like document production. So my sense is that it's not worth trying to amend on that. I'm comfortable with the current language.
Okay. How does everybody else feel? Let's start with Catherine on this one.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Well, Walter.
I think that the secure leave avoids having you appear for either a proceeding or a deposition on a date certain. These others can be accomplished earlier than a date certain. So I think there's sufficient flexibility in these other discovery processes that we don't need to address them in the secure leave rule.
Okay. Kevin?
I don't, personally, I've not had to deal with depositions, so I don't know what that would or wouldn't cause. The other issues, I would agree with what's been said so far as the ability to work with those items.
On sometimes there's a gamesmanship that goes on with subpoenas where they set the production date of documents or persons for inside 10 days. And sometimes they can get a little chaotic, but there's recourse there because the rules protect people from abuse. And the remedy would be to file an objection and then deal with it after you get back from secure leave, I guess. But that's the only thing I could think of that would result, unless someone filed a motion for emergency discovery and was seeking an expedited resolution to their discovery needs. And I think that would be pretty rare, and that would involve a court, and the court's going to do what's necessary one way or another. So I'm thinking everybody's correct that this is not a thing that we have to deal with. I've tried to think through examples of where that might be different. I'll come back to the motions for TROs or preliminary injunctions in a very compressed time frame. My concern about trying to deal with that in terms of secure leave is that either the court will take care of that or the court is not going to shut its doors to something that truly has to be handled in the public interest. And it might shoot down on somebody's vacation plans, but that's sometimes tough darts. At least a judge would be on the hearing end of that. He can make a decision. Anybody else could think of any hypotheticals that would fall under depositions?
I mean, there certainly are several in my world. DVPO, domestic violence protective order return hearings are 10 days. Emergency custody, 10 days. Emergency or certain parenting coordination reports are 4 weeks. So we can have a lot of things. And I've had that happen. I mean, I've been on secure leave and of course somebody filed emergency custody. And I've had it happen twice. And what the judge has done is essentially carry it over to the first day I'm back. And if necessary, enter an ex parte order. And the last time it happened, the judge very nicely asked me how my vacation had been, and then coming back right into court. But I think you just kind of have to leave those to the situation at hand and see what a judge wants to do. But I mean, in my world, I can think of a lot that are, 4 weeks, 10 days, things like that. But I don't think we should set out a rule. I think the court should just handle it as they deem appropriate.
Yeah. But when you have a court, it tends to provide protection of both interests, the attorneys and the public. So I can see that. Thing about depositions, you could just notice them anytime, and somebody will have to go get a judge if it's really a problem. But I think everybody's sizing this up pretty well. That's something we don't need to do anything about. I don't remember anything in the comments I read that to the survey that indicated that there were concerns about having these types of discovery devices or anything like that coming up the works. So I think it's probably not an issue. Okay, and before we leave Rule 26, if there's nothing further on that, we've got the much referred to subparagraph H, other leave. And I think that from early in our conversations, we've decided to just leave this one alone unless we want to just add some more parallel language to it. I'm not sure what that would be. It sort of says it all. But again, anybody that thinks H needs to be written differently, supplemented, changed in any way. Okay, I'm not hearing any groundswell of tears over not touching it, that's for sure. Okay, now let's take a quick look at the appellate rule, 33.1. These are the discussion points I looked at based on everything else we've done. There is, in terms of the allowance of the secure leave for appellate court purposes, they never adopted the straddle rule. So if we adopt a way of counting, then it's not going to make a change to what they're doing in the appellate courts. The designation is submitted electronically already. So that's a good direction to study and see how it's working for them. But again, it's just a Court of Appeals and Supreme Court at this point, and so that's not got the balkanization we've got in other places. Now, when to submit designation, it's a little different. It's before oral argument is scheduled. And sometimes that can run short by 30 to 60 days notice. So do you think our rules for district and superior courts, if the allowance that we give is 30 or 45 days for pre-notice, if that's going to cause the appellate courts any heartburn? Mel, hate to lean on you again, but share your wisdom with us on that, please.
I'm hesitant to comment because I haven't looked at that rule and I don't know, but I can be glad to try to find out. But at this point, I don't know what to say. I don't know how they're.
You know, I don't recall seeing any complaints about the appellate rule, you know, in the various comments and stuff. It's obviously a smaller group of lawyers, but there's a part of me that wonders, you know, there's obviously some uniformity around days and getting rid of the Saturday to Saturday stuff. But I think the, you know, if they've got a time that makes sense in terms of scheduling cases for oral argument, that I'd be disinclined to try to modify that or tell them they should go to 30 days, right? That, you know, seems to make sense. And they've said, well, the court's going to calendar it, and you can, anytime before we calendar it, you can tell us you don't want it in that period. That seems reasonable. So my thought would be to just let that rule stay the way it is, not urge a change, at least on the timing. Maybe some of the definition stuff should change for consistency, but the other stuff, the timing seems logical for them. So I don't know that it has to change.
Very good. Anyone feel differently? All right. Other notes relative to the appellate rules and their differences. The appellate rule does not specify a form of designation. Appellate rule does not prescribe a detailed content of designation. The appellate rule does not have a discovery or comparable rule. And it does not specifically refer to inherent authority. So I don't know that any of those need to be touched. It looks like it's functioning well, but I just want to let you know that this is where differences, I think, in trial courts and appellate courts show up for secure leave purposes. And I'm not advocating any changes in the appellate rules or how the appellate courts use secure leave. I think we risk having it looked at a little too closely at that point, but it does not appear to be broke. Does anybody have a different view or different opinion of the appellate courts? Doesn't sound like it. Everybody all right? Mel, are you okay?
Yeah, thanks for checking, but I'm okay.
Well, you look okay. This is good. All right. Everybody looks okay. All right. Cameron and Savannah, just to check with you, do you have any reason to want to suggest any different considerations of the appellate rules than just leave them alone?
Oh, sorry.
No, I think you're right. We didn't really get any comments about the appellate rules in our survey.
Okay.
Don't fix it.
Good deal. Good deal. All right. Well, that is mercifully the end of the rule by rule survey of Rule 26 and the few minutes we spent on the appellate rules. So I think we've made a lot of progress on looking at things that need some adjustment and are prepared to deal with it. Going forward, we'll need to move from this conceptualization to organizing, I think, the beginnings of what we're going to tell the Issues Committee. And we'll have a couple of meetings in which to do that in early August and then early September, unless somebody's taking secure leave during that period of time, of course. So we may want to turn loose the organizational parts and the writing parts and things that we're still looking at, like what Walter and Mel and others are looking at, and Cameron, of course, with his work. We've got a lot of discussions to have with Savannah and her survey in terms of how to summarize that for purposes of guidance and that kind of thing. Because I'm sure that with the report to the Issues Committee, the heart of that's going to be the kind of research that Savannah's done with her survey and Cameron's done with other jurisdictions. And if you're not from around here, this is how we do it from around here. kind of issues with the judicial districts in North Carolina. So that'll be next up. And in the meantime, we've got a busy week next week, and I will summarize what we've done over the last 3 meetings and hopefully get it to Alice, and it can be part of what's handed out, and the report will be given in Asheville on what we've done. You all have done a terrific job. Let me put this before the group, because it may affect how we end up using the survey. Do we want to go ahead and give the survey to the Issues Committee at this point to take a look at and start integrating the Issues Committee into seeing what the bar thinks, including half of their own bar counselors, if not more?
Definitely.
We got a
I
definitely.
think it's impressive. We got a huge outcome, and it's kind of a mandate for some of the things that we were already inclined to do. So I think sharing it with the whole, with the Issues Committee is great. I think I was delighted by how many people participated in the survey. It's a lot of good info. So,
Yeah. How will we ever convince our colleagues at the state bar that we actually had these ideas before we heard from our brethren and sister.
The minutes. Why do we bother taking minutes?
Okay. Very good. What do you, everybody else feel the same way? I saw Kevin shaking his head. I see Mel shaking his head. I see Walter. Walter, are you? Yeah. Oh, he's shaking his head. Catherine, wiggle so I can see you. Oh, do we lose Catherine? Okay.
She's
I'm
there.
assuming she'll be okay with it. All right. Savannah, you see any downside to making this part of our report to hand out?
No, not at all. I already sent to Alice for the issues committee our last two sets of, or our last two agendas.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not sure what the status is on posting the issues agenda. I don't know if that's been done or not yet. But as soon as we get off today, I can send her our materials for today as a last minute addition for our subcommittee. If that
Okay.
works.
Sure. I tell you, if you would do that and she would handle it, then I don't have to do anything but show up and show everybody up.
We'll do an addendum. We've already posted the.
You're there.
Agenda. I'm here.
Okay.
I'm listening to y'all. You're fantastic. What a great job you're doing. But we'll do it as an addendum. We've posted the regular issues agenda, but we'll send a notice to counselors to tell them to look at that.
Okay. And within the first bit of information you got from Savannah, does that have the survey?
No. So
Okay.
we didn't publish the survey, did we?
The survey is with the survey was circulated to those who got this agenda for today's meeting. So you should have it because I know she sent it to you.
Yeah. Oh, well, I have that.
last
Yeah.
week. Yeah.
We'll just
And so
get
that's
that
what we
all
sent
online.
out. And while it's 80 pages long, I think some of the people on issues will take a look at it, particularly if I mean it's a good read. It's a good read. Yeah, I think that, especially about what they say about practicing in Wake County, various places. Gracious. So
Well, we will put it on the SharePoint, and then we'll send a notice to the counselors, including everybody obviously who's on issues, that's available there to read it. And I'll quote you. I'll do like a little, blurb. Gordon Brown, it's a good read.
no. Or you put, concurred in by the rest of the committee, and you can name names. All of them deserve it. I'm not going down alone on the ship. Anyhow, this has been a great committee, and we still got a lot more work to do. So we'll look for a meeting probably the first week of August, and I don't know how many vacation schedules that may interfere with, but hopefully we can still continue to be working while we're enjoying the last fruits of summer. But so far, so good. Anybody else got anything they want to say or add?
Hey, Gordon, FYI, 3 lawyers raised their hand on that first week of August as having,
did?
Secure leave.
yeah,
Secure
I actually have
leave.
secure leave too.
Yeah, that's my beach week.
Well, good for you. Okay, well, in homage to the benefits of secure leave, Mark, of all people, we got to keep your mental health straight. So
That's right. It's pretty fragile. So
yeah. Anyhow, look, what about the second week of August? Any
Much
conflicts there?
much better. That should be good for me.
Okay. Anybody got conflicts second week? Well, we'll look for that one then instead of the first week, just to get more people there. As long as you do your homework, I don't care. Just sit there with a Corona and the appropriate citrus, and you can read away. Like I said, a good read.
Gordon,
Wait for the movie.
Gordon, I would like to compliment you as chair of this committee and for the members that have worked so hard on this. This has been a very interesting, a good committee to be on, and I thank you all for all the work you've done. Good job.
Well, thank you. We're making progress, and these are terrific colleagues to work with, as you know. So anyhow, I look forward to seeing everybody. Is everybody going to be in Asheville? Good. Looking forward to seeing everybody and everything. And again, don't want it to go without being noticed and heard, but Savannah and Cameron have really been our backbone, and it'll show in the final report, to be sure. And so we're lucky to have them as our deputy counsels on this. Did you hear that, Alice? So thank you to Savannah and Cameron. Anything else to come before the subcommittee this afternoon? Well, I hear a motion to get released on your own recognizance.
So moved.
So granted. Good day, everybody.